homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Good morning, everybody. Okay, today we'll be taking Sutta number 41 in the Majjhima Nikaya. This is called the Discourse to the Brahmins of Sala. And this, I covered this sutta in our previous course. That was the course on the book in the Buddha's words. But since there are some people who are new to the Majjhima Nikaya course, and also this sutta is somewhat valuable, I thought I would take it again. The sutta is especially important because it explains the two types of courses of karma. That is, the 10 courses of unwholesome karma and the 10 courses of wholesome karma. And so the sutta gives us also the opportunity to speak a little bit about the Buddha's teaching on karma. Okay, so the sutta begins when the Buddha was traveling through the land of Kosala, and he eventually arrived at a Brahmin village called Sala. Okay, the opening of the sutta is somewhat standard. One finds this opening in many suttas, but the people of this village or town hear that the Buddha has arrived, then they hear that a certain report has been circulating about him, that he is an accomplished one, that is an arahat, fully enlightened one, he's Sama Sambuddha, he's perfect in knowledge and conduct, the sublime one, knower of the world's incomparable leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, the enlightened one, the blessed one. He declares or he explains the nature of this world with its gods, its maras and its brahmas, of this population with its recluses and Brahmins. It should actually be with its deities and its people, which he has himself realized with direct knowledge. He teaches the Dharma that's good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, and he reveals a holy life that is utterly perfect and pure. So then they decide to go visit the Buddha, and so they come, they greet him in different ways, then they sit down and they ask him the question. So now we come to paragraph 4. So when they're seated, they say to the Buddha, Master Gautama, what is the cause and condition, what is the reason why some beings here, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappear in, here it's translated, states of deprivation, or we could say in the states of misery, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, or we could say in the lower world, even in hell. And what is the cause and condition, what is the reason why some beings here, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappear or take rebirth in a happy destination, even in the heavenly world? Okay, now in this question, the Brahmins are asking a question which seems to be part of the shared background or shared worldview of the Indians of this period. And this is the idea that there are many planes of existence, many realms of existence. And the traditional Buddhist cosmology that we find in the early discourses stratifies these realms of existence into 5 principal realms. So of these 5 realms, we could say the center is the human realm. Then there are worlds below the human realm and worlds above the human realm. Below the human realm, there are particular realms that we share with the animals. These are visible realms. Then there's the realm of beings who are called Pretas, or afflicted spirits, sometimes translated as hungry ghosts. And then there are the hell realms. Then above the human realm there are various heavenly realms. Okay, so below the human realm we have 3 realms which are collectively called the bad destinations or the unhappy destinations, or the states of deprivation, states of misery. In these realms the amount of suffering is much more prominent than the amount of happiness experienced. So these are realms in which suffering, pain, misery, deprivation prevail over happiness or pleasure. Then above the human realm there is a large number of realms that are called the heavens or heavenly realms. Some of them share with us the predominance of sensory experience. So these are the sense sphere heavens. We don't have to go into them individually. But in these realms, the beings enjoy a prevalence of sensual pleasure, but a very refined, subtle type of sensual pleasure, not like the gross sensual pleasures of human beings. So they enjoy lovely forms through the eye, probably beautiful music. They might have very delicious, subtle, refined food, very delicate fabrics, or and they spend all of their time, much of their time, just enjoying these subtle sensual pleasures. And above the sense sphere heavens, there are a large number of realms which are called the form heavens, or the heavens of subtle form. In these realms, the grosser types of sensual pleasure have completely vanished, and the beings here spend most of their time in kind of deep meditative bliss. They still have physical bodies, subtle physical bodies, but it's said that the coarser types of sensory experience have dropped away. The beings can still see and hear, touch, perhaps, but their minds, most of the time, when they're not, I don't know about the lifestyle there, but when they don't have to go about their day-to-day activities, they just immediately settle back into meditative bliss, the bliss of the jhanas, or meditative absorptions. And then above the form heavens, there are some other realms which are called the formless heavens, where even physical bodily form falls away. The beings here are just like streams of mind or consciousness, and most of the time the beings here are absorbed in the meditative peace and equanimity of the formless absorptions. So they don't have to worry about missing buses or having to cook 2 or 3 meals a day, but since they don't have bodies, they don't have to keep up the body. But what it's like when they come out of the meditative absorption, I don't know, but most of the time they're just absorbed in this very tranquil peace, equanimity of the formless meditations. Okay, so these are the realms of existence. Some of them at least seem to have come from the general cosmology of the period, but the way they're fit together into the scheme of the 5 destinations seems to be particularly Buddhist. And it's sometimes thought, believed, especially by some modern Western commentators on Buddhism, that the Buddha just accepted this cosmological scheme because he was speaking in India during this period, and so he had to sort of take on board the Indian cultural package in order to make his message clear to the people of India. But in fact, we see over and over again in the suttas that the Buddha teaches this cosmology on his own as realms that he has himself realized through his own abhinya, or direct knowledge. And again he explains the different types of karma that lead to rebirth into these different realms. So these are the 5 principal realms of rebirth. In the somewhat later period, a 6th realm comes to be added, which is called the realm of the asuras. The asuras are the titanic type of beings. They're almost like the devas, except they're depicted as being fierce and angry rather than blissful and peaceful. And often they're shown as being in a kind of state of war with the devas. They're trying to conquer the deva realm, especially the realm of the 33 devas. And so in this cosmology, we might see the Titans as being a kind of subset of the sense-sphere heavenly realm. But in the early texts, the asuras are not separated off into a realm of their own. Okay, so now the the Brahmins who have come to the Buddha are asking, what is the reason why some beings are reborn into the lower realms, and what is the reason why other beings are reborn into the higher realms? And according to the Buddhist explanation of the mechanism or dynamism that underlies the process of rebirth, according to the Buddhist teaching, that mechanism or dynamism is what is called karma, or in Pali, kamma. So it's kamma is the governing factor that determines rebirth into these different realms. But what exactly is karma? Some kind of mysterious force, some kind of destiny that you read about in the horoscope. What is karma exactly? Action, that's right. The word originally means action or deed. And what kind of action is karma? Particular type of action. The decisive factor according to the Buddha's teaching. Right, it's volitional action. That is an action that expresses volition, that expresses intention. So an action that takes place, but a kind of accidental action does not create karma. For example, if you're walking down a road in the summertime and there are insects on the road and you step on a bug, the bug dies, it's not the karma of taking life, because you're not doing this intentionally. Of course, one should try to be mindful when walking, not to step on visible insects. But sometimes one can't help because one can't see them. So that doesn't create karma. And so in this sutta, the Buddha is going to he doesn't use the explicit word karma, but he explains it in terms of another word, which is conduct. The word that's used here is charya. The word karma comes from the verb karoti, which means to do or to make. I'm wondering whether the English word create comes from the same Indo-European roots. Perhaps so. Because the root in Sanskrit would be kra. So you can see kra turning into create on the one hand, and then in Sanskrit karma or karoti on the other. Okay, the word meaning conduct is charya, which comes from the verb charity, which originally meant to walk. And so from walking, when you walk, you engage in a particular process or you take a particular path. And so walking turns into a kind of behavior or conduct. And so the word chariot takes on the meaning of conduct. And so the Buddha explains this dynamism behind the process of rebirth in terms of two different types of conduct. In paragraph 5, he says, "It is by reason of conduct not in accordance with the Dhamma, by reason of unrighteous conduct, that some beings here, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappear or are reborn in states of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, let's say in the lower world, even in hell. And it is by reason of conduct in accordance with the Dhamma, by reason of righteous conduct, that some beings here, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappear or take rebirth in a happy destination or in a good destination, even in the heavenly world." Okay, so the Buddha, speaking in a very broad and general way, distinguishes action or conduct into two types. And he distinguishes the action into two types according to Dhamma, which here is not being used in the narrow sense or the specific sense of the Buddha's own teachings. But the concept of Dhamma was something which was shared among just about all of the Indian spiritual teachings of this period. And so the idea of Dhamma is the idea of a kind of universal principle of goodness, righteousness, and truth that lies behind the working of the cosmic process and that also lies behind human activity. It's the kind of, you could say, it's the ideal standard of human activity. So a king who's ruling a country, even if he doesn't know anything about Buddhism, but if he rules according righteously, if he rules benevolently, if he looks after his subjects, if he exercises justice, prudence in administering his realm, we say that he's a Dhamma Raja, that he's a righteous king. Yeah. Did you have a question? Oh. Excuse me? Oh, to wipe the blackboard. Not quite yet. Well, I need something to be wiped. I'll let you know. Okay, so we have this sort of objective standard of goodness, of truth, of rightness, which is Dhamma. And so we have today, the meditation teacher Goenka, the Vipassana meditation teacher in India, in order to attract Indian people who would be hesitant to come to him and learn from him. If he says, "I'm teaching Buddhism," then the Hindu people will think, "Oh, we can't go to Goenka. He's teaching Buddhism, we're Hindus." Or the Jain people think we can't learn Vipassana because we're Jains. So the Goenka says, "I'm not teaching Buddhism, I'm teaching Dhamma." And so Hindu people think we follow Dhamma also. Jain people think we follow Dhamma also. People, what's the other community? Sikhs think we follow Dhamma also. The Parsis, people of Persian, Zoroastrian descent, think we follow Dhamma also. So this concept of Dhamma is the kind of all-Indian concept of the basic principles of goodness, truth, reality, justice, fairness, wisdom. And so action can either accord with the Dhamma, action can flow in harmony with this universal law of goodness or truth. It's like a river or like an object which is flowing along with the river. Or action can contradict the principle of rightness, righteousness, goodness, and truth. And that's like an object going contrary to the current of the river. And so it is this that determines actions as being righteous or unrighteous, whether they accord with this universal law of goodness, truth, and righteousness. Okay, before we go into details, maybe I'll ask if there's any questions at this point. Yes?
So, at least up till this point, the word karma has not actually been used.
It hasn't been used. I'm not sure that it's going to occur in the sutta at all. But basically the word it seems like the word karma doesn't occur in the sutta, but the word charya is virtually synonymous.
Is this
is it your understanding that this might be an earlier teaching of the Buddha's at a point where he maybe hasn't sort of formulated his concept of karma yet?
I doubt that. I think that he's just using an alternative manner of expression. Because what's being laid out here are basically the same as the 10 courses of unwholesome and wholesome karma. Any other questions?
When you say if a person steps an insect in the summer accidentally, that doesn't create karma at all, or that doesn't create a karma of killing at all?
Yeah, the act of killing the insect, stepping on it unintentionally, doesn't create the karma of killing.
And does it create a karma?
I don't think it would create the karma, no.
So that's an action without any consequence.
Yeah, technically one would say it's not a karma at all. It's an action, but it's not an action that creates a karmic consequence. Of course, the person will be thinking certain thoughts, and if the person is thinking unwholesome thoughts, he'll be creating unwholesome karma. If he's thinking wholesome thoughts, he'll be creating wholesome karma. But his action of stepping on the insect is not an action of killing.
It doesn't create a karma of killing, but it creates certain kind of karma, and only arhat doesn't, in certain aspect, doesn't create karma. Otherwise, every action creates certain kind of karma. It's not the case.
The way in my own understanding, it would only be what I would call the ethically significant types of actions that create the karma. According to the Abhidhamma system, they say every thought, every momentary thought creates some karma, wholesome or unwholesome. I'm not sure whether that is the case. At least in the suttas, the discourses, intention is not directed to every single thought that arises in the mind, but only what I would call morally significant actions and thoughts.
But why if somebody kill another person not on purpose, like by accident, does it create karma?
Okay, if somebody kills another person by accident,
Yeah.
even that would not create the karma of killing.
Because I think a long time ago I was taking another course online.
A course
online, like
Yeah.
through Skype. And we also talked about the karma. At that time, maybe it's different, like Mahayana and Theravada. Maybe it's different. Because the Venerable gave us an example. It's a king. He was playing chess with another person, and at that time, a monk came to see him, so the soldier went to see the king and see if he wants to see the monk. But the king at that time, because he was playing the chess, and he said, "Kill." It's on the chess. I don't know how to explain, but it's because of chess, and he said kill, but the soldier think kill the monk. So the soldier took the monk and killed him. And it's because, if I didn't remember wrong, it's because the monk in his last life, he killed the king by accident.
So the monk got killed by accident in this life.
Yeah. I don't know where it comes from, because mostly I don't remember where something comes from.
Yeah, I have to say it doesn't seem probable to me. Because whether I kill somebody by accident or I kill somebody unintentionally, if I get the karma of killing, and then in the next life I get killed by somebody else, it doesn't matter to me. I'm getting killed. So, but it should matter. It should be the case that only the person who kills intentionally should accumulate the karma of killing to be killed in the next life. And the king who says, kill, the way I would see it, he doesn't get the karma of killing the monk, because it's not his intention to kill anybody, he's just playing the game. But his soldier who killed the monk, of course, he'll get the karma of killing, because even though he misinterpreted the king's command, but he performed the act of killing. In fact, there's a story about the king Ashoka, the great king of India. How does it go? I think he gave a command to a minister. It said that there were numerous so-called heretics infiltrating the Buddha's Sangha in order to take advantage of the king's generosity. So the king gave an order to a minister to get rid of the phony monks, the imposters posing as monks. And so the minister went and rounded up the people who he determined to be the phony monks and had them killed. He thought that was what the king meant by get rid of them, whereas the king only meant to expel them from the Sangha. So then when King Ashoka heard this, he was worried, did I get the karma of killing? And it was always disturbing his conscience till he met the monk who told him that you had no intention of killing any monks. So the karma is with your minister, not with yourself. Okay, these questions from the internet, not so really directly related to our topic. Okay.
Does every sentient being by definition have 5 aggregates?
Does every sentient being. All sentient beings except the beings in the formless realm. In the formless realm there's no form aggregate. Okay, so let us go on now. So when the Buddha gives this very general account of the working of karma and rebirth, the Brahmins say, we don't understand the detailed meaning of what Master Gotama has said. Please explain the Dhamma in detail so that we could understand it. Okay, so now the Buddha is going to give a detailed explanation, and this is going to be the explanation first of the 10 unwholesome types of karma, and then the 10 wholesome types of karma. Okay, so now the Buddha says that there are 3 kinds of bodily conduct not in accordance with the Dharma, unrighteous conduct, 4 kinds of verbal conduct not in accordance with the Dharma, and 3 kinds of mental conduct not in accordance with the Dharma. And so you see, we have here what the Buddhist text they refer to as the 3 doors of action. That is the door of body, door of speech, and door of the mind or thought. Actually, the mind is involved in all types of karma, because the mind is in the mind that volition arises. But sometimes volition arising in the mind expresses itself through the body as a bodily action. Then it becomes bodily conduct. Sometimes volition expresses itself through speech. Then it becomes verbal conduct or verbal karma. So speech, or even nowadays we could say writing, is a form of verbal karma. Internet type of verbal karma. Nowadays we have people, always see them. What is this?
Texting.
What? Text messaging. Any other types? Someday they're going to get ways to, you just put the plug into the mic, into the ear, or maybe they'll do a little surgery to put it into the brain. And you think, I want to communicate with so-and-so, and you just think the thoughts, and the thoughts will go to so-and-so. That's right. Yeah, but to protect the person, so that this is the privacy provision, you have to consciously think 3 times, I want this message to go to so-and-so. Otherwise, the people will be reading each other's minds. Nobody will have any friends anymore. Okay, so 4 kinds of verbal conduct, and then the 3 types of mental conduct are types of thoughts that remain purely mental but don't express themselves in bodily or verbal action. Okay, so how are there 3 kinds of bodily conduct not in accordance with the Dhamma, unrighteous conduct? Okay, so then the Buddha explains, and these are all pretty much stock explanations which occur again and again in the suttas. Somebody kills living beings, he is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. He takes what is not given. He takes by way of theft the wealth and property of others in the village or forest. So if one takes something which doesn't belong to anybody, one finds on the road or on the beach, maybe some nice seashells or some beautiful stones, and they're not on somebody's property, you don't have to be worried, if I take them, am I going to be breaking this moral principle? That's okay. What is actually intended by taking what is not given is taking the property or belongings of others. Okay, he misconducts himself in sensual pleasures. He has intercourse with women who are protected by their mother, father, both mother and father, brother, sister, relatives, who have a husband, who are protected by law, and even those who are garlanded in token of betrothal. That is one who is engaged. In India, when at the engagement ceremony, they put the garland around the necks of the couple. And we have to remember, in India, in the Buddha's time, things were always formulated, I have to say, from the standpoint of the male. So we don't get the formulation of sexual misconduct from the standpoint of the woman. But it's interesting, one has to discuss this a little openly, that what constitutes sexual misconduct for the man is having sexual relations with a woman who is in a fixed relationship to somebody else. That is, if it's a minor protected by relatives, or a married woman, or an engaged woman, or somebody protected by the law. But if a married man, this is probably according to Indian law, if he goes to a house of prostitution and has relations with a prostitute, it seems it's not regarded as sexual misconduct against the background of that time. Or even if a married man has relationship with, not to speak of a prostitute, but just of a single woman. I don't know. Nowadays we would regard that as sexual misconduct. But it seems in India during the Buddha's time that was regarded as permissible. And the texts don't state what is sexual misconduct for the woman, but the commentaries say if a married woman has sexual relations with any man apart from her husband, then it's sexual misconduct. And so the way it's interpreted by the commentaries, at least, it's not exactly parallel or symmetrical. And I have to say also that there's nothing in the early Buddhist texts which condemns homosexual relations as being sexual misconduct. Some years ago, the Dalai Lama was giving a lecture in which he said he was enumerating types of sexual misconduct, and then he mentioned homosexual relations, and it created a big furor amongst the gay and lesbian community in the U.S. But in fact, the Dalai Lama was not basing himself on any of the early Buddhist texts, but upon a medieval commentary from the 4th century called the Abhidharma Kosha. But there's no statement in the early Buddhist texts condemning homosexual relations as such. It's just that if an ordained monk or nun has a homosexual relationship which involves in full penetration of some sort, then it's defeat for them, just as it is if they have a heterosexual relation. In both cases, they have to be expelled from the monastic order. Okay, so these are 3 types of bodily misconduct. I'll just go quickly through the other types. The verbal misconduct. Someone speaks falsehood, and then a special type is mentioned as being this would be the heaviest and gravest type of false speech. That when someone is called to a meeting or to the court, and he's questioned as a witness, tell what you know, not knowing, he says, I know, or knowing, he says, I do not know, not seeing, he says, I have seen, or having seen, he says, I did not see. So that is, in other words, bearing false witness or perjury is the gravest form of false speech. But then to include the other types, he says, in full awareness, he speaks falsehood for his own ends, for his own benefit, or for another's end, to secure some type of worldly benefit for another person, or even for some trifling worldly benefit. So that is false speech. Then somebody speaks maliciously. This is divisive speech. That is, he speaks to others, he tells a group of people what he's heard about somebody else in order to intentionally create divisions between them. Then he speaks harshly. That is, he speaks words that are rough, hard, hurtful to others, offensive, bordering on anger, unconducive to concentration. And then he is a gossip, somebody who speaks at the wrong time, speaks what is not fact, speaks what is useless, speaks contrary to the Dhamma and discipline, and so on. He speaks words that are worthless, unreasonable, immoderate, and unbeneficial. I think that includes most of us. But it seems that this is taken, I have to say, from a monastic perspective, the kind of speech that a monk should avoid. But I think if in ordinary day-to-day life we speak words that are not about the Dhamma or about the discipline, but just ordinary polite conversation, I don't think that would be included under immoderate speech. Okay, those are four types of verbal misconduct. Then 3 types of mental misconduct. Okay, somebody is covetous. Now sometimes the word covetousness is used in the sense simply having desire or craving for some kind of sensual enjoyment. But that is not the type that creates the strong, unwholesome karma that can lead to rebirth in the lower realms. But the type of unwholesome thought governed by craving that creates the unwholesome karma is coveting the wealth and property of others. That is, thinking, I want to get possession of somebody else's wealth or their belongings. And so it takes the form of a wish. I wish that what belongs to others could be mine. So if I see that, say, Heidi has a nice computer, and I think, that's a nice computer, I wish that I had a computer like that. Okay, that's a greedy thought, but it's not creating this type of unwholesome karma. But if I think, I want to get Heidi's computer, so maybe when she's not looking, I will just, what's the expression, pilfer it and dash off with it. Well, that would be stealing, but if I'm just thinking about that, planning it, or brooding, how can I get that computer, then it becomes the unwholesome thought, the covetousness, the unwholesome type of karma. Okay, the next, somebody has a mind of ill will and intentions of hate. Okay, we might have ill will towards another person, or sometimes we don't like a particular person, or some things that other person does make us feel even hatred towards that person. Of course, that's creating unwholesome karma, but it's not the powerful unwholesome karma that can generate an undesirable rebirth. What is the unwholesome, unrighteous course of conduct that has the power to create the unwholesome rebirth is the type of hatred that takes the form of a thought, a wish that somebody else will meet with suffering and misery, even with pain and with death. So it takes the form of the thought, may these beings be slain and slaughtered, may they be cut off, perish, or be annihilated. So if I don't like Jimmy, say, and whenever Jimmy walks into the room, my mind gets upset and angry, and I wish he'd go away. Of course, it's unwholesome thought. It's creating some kind of unwholesome karma, but that isn't the strong unwholesome karma, but the power to create the unwholesome rebirth. But if I think, I wish Jimmy would drop dead, or I wish Jimmy would meet with some kind of misfortune, or I wish he'd get knocked off, then that is the unwholesome type of unrighteous conduct of mind. Okay, then the 10th type of unwholesome karma, or unwholesome course of, the 10th unwholesome course of conduct is wrong view. And this is specifically the wrong view that denies the working of the law of karma. So it takes the form that there is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed, or nothing given in charity. That there is no fruit of result of good and bad actions, that there is not this world or any other world, no mother or father. This doesn't mean that you don't believe that beings are reborn from a mother or father, but it means no point in looking after one's mother or father, no point in being kind and good and generous and helpful to one's parents. That there are no beings who are, I think it should actually be no beings who are reborn, no good and virtuous recluses and Brahmins in the world who have themselves attained some kind of higher realization and teach the nature of this world and the other worlds. So that is the wrong view that creates the unwholesome karma, a strong unwholesome karma. And I think one has to see the classification of this type of view as an unwholesome, unrighteous course of conduct against the Buddha's time, the background of the Buddha's time, where there was a general belief, a presupposition, that a good person, a virtuous person, is one who accepts the working of the law of karma and accepts the idea of rebirth into other realms. And so if a person explicitly denies this, particularly if they say that there's no point in doing any good deeds, any charity, no point in looking even after one's parents, no point in observing precepts. When you die, all that's left is the body. When the body gets buried, it just turns to dust, everything finished. And when good or bad deeds, all gone away. Okay, that would be the unwholesome course of action. But nowadays we have people, who were brought up on scientific background. They might say, I don't see any scientific proof for the continuation of mind or consciousness beyond death. And so I don't believe that there's any personal survival of death. But they can be very good, very ethical people who still believe that one should be generous and helpful to others, that one should observe principles of nonviolence, that one should be conscientious member of one's community. So if they deny karma and rebirth, but still uphold the basic code of ethics as a result of moral reflection and reasoning, I don't think that their view would be a type of unwholesome karma. Okay, at this point I'll ask whether there's any questions on this. Okay, please take the microphone.
Wasn't there a teacher during the Buddhist time who actually did teach what you just described, what I would call nihilism?
Yeah.
So is it possible that this is kind of also a pointed denial or jab at that teacher?
Yeah, so I don't think that this is intended as a kind of personal jab at that teacher, but the Buddha rejected that teacher's view because, again, against the background of his time, that kind of view was seen as undermining one of the foundations for morality. And in fact, that teacher, the way his view continues, you find this in Sutta number 7, his view explained at length in Sutta number 76 in the Middle Length Discourses. He goes on to say that those who teach the doctrine of giving, who praise the virtues of giving, those are fools. That a person lasts, that when the person dies, their sense faculties just completely stop functioning, the mind faculty just vanishes into space, and they praise the person while they bring him to the burial ground, and then after the burial, after the cremation, all that is left are ashes. And so then he says, the wise and the foolish after death perish and are annihilated and do not exist anymore.
So did that particular teacher, do you know, basically teach, like, so eat, drink, and be merry, and do whatever you want?
It seems so, though all we know about that teacher's teaching, because no records have survived apart from what has come down in the Buddhist text. And so that's really all we know about his teaching. But he seems to have been something like a materialist who held that what exists in reality are just the material elements, and mind or consciousness is just a byproduct of material elements. And so when the material elements that give rise to life, when they cease, then mind or consciousness completely stops. Kennedy, you have down here. This one.
Do thoughts which is greedy but not harmful to others create karma?
Yeah. Say again.
Do thoughts which is greedy but not harmful to others create karma?
I see. Yeah, the thoughts that are thoughts of harming others, but that are not so strong as wishing them to meet harm. Is that what you mean?
It's greedy, but it's not harmful to others.
Oh, I see. Greedy thoughts that don't harm others. They create karma. They create unwholesome karma, but the karma is not strong enough to serve as a basis for generating the rebirth into the lower realms. It's only when the greedy thought takes the form of wishing to get the possessions of others that it is strong enough to take on that role of creating the new rebirth. Let's see. Okay, so he says, this is actually a comment. It seems that the wrong sexual conduct in early Buddhism is that which causes physical or mental harm to the parties involved, including legal guardians, or that break a law or a confidence between people. Yes, that's a good point. Then the Buddha's golden rule emphasizes self-restraint. Do not hurt others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. That's also a good point. Interesting. interesting 8 followed by is converted into the sunglass icon. I don't know what that means. Oh, 8 followed by a closing parentheses is converted into the sunglass icon. What does that have to do with the class? Okay, let's go to the other side of the teaching now. So now the Buddha is going to teach the 10 kinds of good conduct. Good conduct of body, speech, and mind. So he gives the general statement, paragraph 11. Then he moves into the detail, paragraph 12, with the types of good bodily conduct. Okay, here someone abandons the killing of living beings, abstains from the killing of living beings, and has laid aside the rod and weapon, that is the instruments of killing. Now, in the good types of conduct, there are actually 2 aspects. Okay, now we're just... One is called varita. Varita means refraining from or abstaining from. The other is charita. Charita means, again, it's from the root charity, to act. So we could call this positive action or virtuous action. So the varita aspect of the first type of wholesome conduct is abandoning and abstaining from killing and harming living beings. Then the charita aspect, the good aspect, or we say the positive aspect, is being gentle and kind and being compassionate to all living beings. Then we come to the second. The varita aspect is abandoning the taking of what is not given, abstaining from taking what is not given, and not taking by way of theft the wealth and property of others in the village or in the forest. But actually, some other suttas say that one dwells honestly, one lives honestly, pure in heart. Okay, then abandon the third principle. The varita aspect of restraining is abandoning and abstaining from misconduct and sensual pleasures, not having relations with all of those types of women that are mentioned. And elsewhere, the positive aspect is said to be remaining what is called satisfied with one's own wife. So we could generalize that and say remaining satisfied with one's own partner. So these are 3 types of bodily conduct that are in accordance with the Dhamma. Then 4 types of verbal conduct in accordance with the Dhamma. Here, the aspect of varita, someone abandons and abstains from false speech. Then when somebody is called as a witness, he says what he knows, what he has seen, without any kind of false speech. So speaking truthfully, we can say, is the positive aspect. Which doesn't mean that one has to speak the truth even if it offends other people. But one should always try to speak the truth when it doesn't offend anybody or when it's the right time and circumstances for doing so. Okay. The next one, abandoning and abstaining from malicious or divisive speech. That's the aspect of refraining. Then the positive aspect is said one reunites those who are divided, a promoter of friendships, one who enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights in concord, one who speaks words that promote concord. Next, abandoning harsh speech and abstaining from harsh speech. That's the aspect of restraint. The positive aspect, one speaks words that are gentle, pleasing to the ear, and lovable, as go to the heart, courteous, desired by many, agreeable to many. Then the next one abandons and abstains from gossip or idle chatter. And the positive aspect, one speaks at the right time, speaks what is fact, speaks on what is good, speaks on the Dharma and discipline, speaks words that are worth recording, reasonable, moderate, and beneficial. So these are the 4 kinds of good, wholesome verbal conduct. Then 3 types of mental conduct in accordance with the Dhamma. Okay, someone is not covetousness, and he does not covet the wealth and property of others. He is without ill will and free from intentions of hate. And instead he wishes, may these beings be free from enmity, affliction, and anxiety. May they live happily. And then the 10th, he has a right view, the view that there is giving, offerings, and charity. There is the fruit and result of good and bad deeds. There is this world and the other world. There is mother and father, or in other words, service to mother and father. There are beings who are reborn. There are good and virtuous recluses and Brahmins who understand the nature of this world and explain them to others. Okay, so these are the 10 types of good or wholesome conduct, the types of conduct that are in accordance with the Dhamma, righteous conduct. Okay, now the Buddha ends the discourse by showing the benefits or fruits of the 10 types of good conduct. He says, if one who observes conduct in accordance with the Dhamma, righteous conduct, should wish after death may I be reborn in the company of well-to-do nobles, the kshatriyas, the aristocrats, it is possible that he will be reborn in such a way. If he wishes, may I be reborn in the company of well-to-do Brahmins, in the company of well-to-do householders, it is possible that he will be reborn in that way. So he has, we call this a store of wholesome karma, of virtuous conduct, and that virtuous conduct is the kind of karmic fuel that can propel his consciousness into the realm of rebirth, where he wants to be reborn. And so if one forms a strong aspiration to be reborn as a human being in good circumstances, then if one has sufficient karmic merits, then those merits will direct one towards that realm. Okay, if one wants to be reborn in the company of the Devas, and here the Buddha goes through the 6 sense-sphere Deva realms, the 4 great kings, the heaven of the 33, the Yama gods, the Tusita heaven, the gods who delight in creating, the gods who wield power over others' creations. Those are the 6 sense-sphere heavens. One could be reborn in those realms. Okay, if one wants to be reborn in the form realm, starting with the gods of Brahma's retinue, up through the gods of the Akhanita realm, one needs as the basis the 10 types of wholesome karma. But that is not sufficient. In order to be reborn in the form realm, one also needs the power of meditation, the power of samadhi. So the basis is virtuous conduct, the 10 types of virtuous conduct, but you have to use fortified fuel. It's not enough just to have the ordinary fuel, but it has to be like, do they have, when you get gasoline, super? Is there something called ordinary gasoline and super gasoline? So this is like super gasoline. 10 types of good conduct is the basis, but then they have to pump in and treat it chemically with the power of samadhi to get to the form realm. If one wants to be reborn in the realm of infinite space, the realm of infinite consciousness, the realm of nothingness, the realm of neither perception nor non-perception, through the 10 types of wholesome karma, one can be reborn there, but that has to be reinforced or strengthened by the superpower of samadhi. That is, as a human being, one has to develop the formless meditations. Okay, then paragraph 43, the Buddha brings in the highest aim. He says, if one who observes conduct in accordance with the Dhamma, righteous conduct, should wish, may I realize for myself with direct knowledge, here and now, and enter in the deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom that is taintless with the destruction of the asavas, the destruction of the taints or defilements. It is possible that he can realize this liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, right here and now. Why is that? Because he observes conduct in accordance with the Dhamma, righteous conduct. So even for attaining nirvana, in this very life, the basis is the 10 courses of wholesome karma. But to reach that, one needs more than just the 10 courses. One needs the super power of the Noble Eightfold Path. One needs also samadhi and then insight or wisdom to cut off all the defilements. Or in other words, one needs the whole Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, right action, the right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, mindfulness, effort, concentration, and effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Okay, so then when the Buddha finished speaking, then the Brahmins, householders, expressed their appreciation, and they go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In other words, a happy ending. Okay, any questions now on anything in the Sutta? Jerry? You want to say this?
strikes me is it almost seems that this is where vows are born.
Yeah.
Do you, we can take that into Bodhisattva vows. And also conduct. And the Bodhisattva vows. It seems as we read through this, it's very striking that one can take on specific vows. And be, along the Buddha's path.
Yeah, that is actually so. In fact, the Sutta comes much later in the Middle Life Discourses, where the Buddha explicitly says that if one wants to be reborn in a particular realm, one can make the aspiration to be reborn in that realm and constantly dwell on that, but then one has to sort of strengthen that resolution or aspiration with, I think he mentions 5 factors: faith, virtue, learning, generosity, and wisdom. In a way, those are almost like predecessors of, almost like Paramitas. And so it's the vow or aspiration together with the power of certain spiritual qualities that those sort of encompass the aspiration and they could direct the consciousness to. And take the yes,
a long way around.
Yeah, we need a canal. The library table canal.
I've always been troubled by the rebirth as a wealthy person. I know it's a complex question, but it has been used as a justification for social iniquities. That poor people are looked upon as people who have earned the suffering and hunger and strife.
I have to admit that I find that somewhat troubling in that respect too. The way I see it, or at least the way I explain it to myself, like I don't have any aspiration to be reborn as in a family of millionaires or millionaires, but I would say that it's good to have the aspiration to be reborn at least under suitable conditions, so that under favorable material conditions, so that one is able to meet with the Dharma, and so one is free from, let's see, the crying desperation of material need that will direct one's whole attention just to getting enough food, to getting the shelter, to get clothing, to live in a country which is free from the ravages of war, even though we're living in a country which is responsible for a lot of warfare right now. Maybe, Richard, do you have something?
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Then I wonder why would the Buddha put up with admiration for the rich when the rich are withholding from the poor what the poor need to survive, and they're just squandering it on luxury?
Well, also don't forget that the Buddha praises always generosity, giving and generosity. So maybe he sees that as a way to balance out the inequalities and standards of living. And also, probably in the Buddha's time, well, I don't know, there seem to have been quite sharp differences in living standards.
Well, in India now, there's fabulous wealth next to absolute poverty. People dying of malnutrition. And for most, for Hinduism does not mandate anything against that. There are some Hindus who are quite generous, but the problem with generosity and charity is that it means that the poor have nothing of right. They have nothing that they can expect or that they can demand or that they're entitled to, whereas they simply become dependent upon the arbitrary generosity of the rich. And so that there's no possibility of social justice there. So why admire the rich? Why, when someone says, well, gee, I want to live a good life so I can be reborn as a wealthy person, why would the Buddha put up with that? Why would he say, well, I don't regard that as a worthy wish?
I would what?
I said, why wouldn't he say, I don't regard that as a worthy wish, as a worthy desire?
Yeah, I have to say, I find this a little bit troublesome too. All?
Can I consider those are stepping stones that I don't think I can achieve the final goal this life, next life? That food is not a problem, that I can practice more. It's just a stepping stone.
Yeah. But the problem is that if these people that get very rich become infatuated with their wealth and not satisfied with it. So my aspiration would be just to be sometimes like middle class, but also sometimes poverty, if it's not utterly brutalizing and degrading poverty, can be a spur for people to develop their better faculties, the faculty of being diligent, energetic, persistent, patient, hardworking, and then to work themselves up and in this way they will develop certain qualities that can then be directed in a spiritual direction. It's good for people who are speaking to take the microphone. Maybe Patricia knows.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your teaching. It wasn't until I had almost no money that I truly had compassion for people who have no money.
Yeah.
Until I had my own experience of something that I really knew what it was about. So I'm very happy that I wasn't born with a lot of money, although I did inherit quite a bit of money, but didn't know what to do with it. Because I didn't have a background of knowledge about having money in this lifetime. Until I had no more money, then I had the questions about what should I have done when I had money. So it goes around and around like this. But I'm very grateful that I don't have that money because of the wonderful experience I've had seeing how it is for other people that have no jobs and no food and no clothing, which is 1,000,000 times worse or less than what I have. So I think it's all a teacher for us, whether we have a lot of money or not. And I think if we look at the benefit of what we learn as an abundance rather than the amount of money we have. And I know many, many people who are very, very wealthy, who are very, very good-hearted, but their experience is different, so they can only do what they know. So,
Neil, did you have something related to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that from other things I've read, and I can't cite anything, that my sense of the Buddha talking about the advantages of wealth was always hand in hand with that that people who are blessed with good fortune have the good fortune to be able to help those who don't have good fortune. And I think, I'm assuming, I don't know, but that in the time of the Buddha, I'm sure there was greed, but I don't think it was to the degree that we have today, because there wasn't the kind of wealth that we have today. And I think it probably was part of the culture that those who were fortunate helped those less fortunate more often than not.
I think that there were both. There are some texts which speak about how the Kshatriyas and Brahmins are not satisfied with what they have, how they are plundering one another, competing with one another to get more and more wealth, how the greed is insatiable. So it's a little bit like we have today. Except the point that you make is that the Buddha does speak in other suttas about how a person should use their wealth. And then he speaks about that they should invest a certain amount in their business, use a certain amount to provide for their own material well-being, a certain amount to provide the taxes to the government, to perform certain duties to the relatives. Then another portion, a substantial portion, is used for giving, for generosity.
And those were equal portions.
Yeah. But I have to say that this way of teaching, it does lead to, at least in what I've observed in Sri Lanka, the idea that the rich are people who must have done good karma, and the poor are people who have not done good karma. And yet, well, if I look at the rich people, really rich people in the United States, there are some who are good, but others who are just insatiable and unscrupulous. And often one finds poor people, like poor people in third world countries, traditional countries, often have much more loving kindness, much more generosity, much more sense of care and compassion for one another than the rich people who have all of their material needs met.
Even in the United States, the IRS reports that the rich give a smaller percentage of their income than the poor.
Okay, I think we'll have to leave anything further, or we can have a discussion after the class. Maybe we'll do it in the Kuan Yin Hall. I don't know whether the tables are set up, or we could just sit on the mats and discuss any further questions. And then next week we have the class, the 18th. Also, the class will be here in the library. And next time I'll try to do 2 speeches. This is number 45 and 46. Anyway, I think as far as making wishes for rebirth goes, just my own personal opinion, not to make a wish to be rich, to be famous, to be powerful, or anything like that, but just to make a wish to encounter the Dharma and to be able to practice and study under suitable conditions, and then to be able to teach and spread the Dharma to others, or to work with the Dharma in some form. That is the best kind of wish. And if you make that wish, then if your encounter with the Dhamma is going to come through being very wealthy, that will occur. If it's going to come by struggling with poverty, that will occur. If it's by being famous, that will occur. If it's by being despised and neglected by others, that will occur. Just sort of let one's path unfold according to the laws of nature, but keep the wish to meet the Dharma and to practice in life after life. Keep that foremost in the mind. Anybody disagree with that? Okay. Okay, so we share the merits with the Devas, the Nagas, the dragon spirits, the Bhutas, the fair spirits, and with all beings in general. Wishing them to be well and happy, and to protect the Dharma, to protect the world. Akasa Chagumaka Deva Nagam Hidika Punyam Rangodikva Chiram Rakantu Nam Param Akasa. No, I lost my mindfulness. Okay. Akasa ta chabumaka deva naga nidika punyanta anumodika shiram rakantu desanam. Akasa ta chabumaka deva naga nidika punyanta anumodika shiram rakantu manparam. Eka vadacham hehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe devam modantu sabba sampati siddhya. Eka vadacham hehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe bhutam modantu Sabha sampati siddhya ekavata chamyehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe satanumodamtu Sabha sampati siddhya Bhagavutpadaya vichirishto Etantare satakai pakana Rupiya rupicha Asanya samino Tukha pamuchantu Pusantu nibukti